Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Sovereign and Yvonne. I'm Shay Ryan Douglas from the Earth Heroes TV platform, and we are on Ascension Wisdom TV today. Very exciting to have Yvonne and Sovereign in this conversation, this roundtable discussion. We've been talking about creating the new Earth experience, bringing in, manifesting this greater big vision for humanity as we transition from an old paradigm, an old way of being that we could all agree is not necessarily serve the people. And although we've got many blessings, many privileges, and a lot to be thankful for in the world, we get to create a new way of being as we move into this new era, this kind of cosmological alignment that is bringing us into a deeper calling for more meaning in life. And that's why we love to have these conversations every Thursday around what it takes to create a new Earth experience. And we're going to have another conversation today as to what it takes to actually action what we're speaking to, not just talking about it, but putting it into place in the on the ground action taking that's necessary. And we're going to hear some stories and share a little bit of our own experience through this conversation. So I just want to invite you to stay with us for the whole chat because it's going to be really inspiring. We normally bring on other people from other communities who are also living and breathing in this way of being that is in more connection with the environment in their community and also more importantly within themselves. This is what Yvonne always so elegantly speaks to, the work that it requires to drop into our own inner navigation system and turn on that GPS. So stay with us for this chat, and I just wanted to invite you before we dive into it just to like this video or leave us a comment on where you're tuning in from right now. And if you have any questions that you would love to explore and be a part of this conversation, just drop us a line, let us know, because we'd love for you to be a part of this journey with us together. But otherwise, I would just love to thank you guys for being on and being live and being part of this conversation. So curious to hear from Yvonne. We've had this conversation often, and maybe to hear from you what you would consider it takes to be walking the talk during this time as we move into this new era of being and living and connecting.
Wow, that's a very simple question, isn't it? What a way. I just love how you throw those balls into my court. Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm so excited because I'm usually on with one or other of you, and having both my beautiful friends on together, that is such a blessing. It's great to see you, Sovereign, after your journey that I'm sure you're going to share some of, or not, with us a bit later. Look, you know how involved I am. For those of you who don't know, then go back and listen to the videos. Go and watch, my Facebook page and the Connect to Soul New Earth community page, and you'll see how involved I am in creating a New Earth community. And every week we have new people coming, and so what I'm observing is that yes. And I think with Sovereign too, with the Brave New Life community people, they come because it feels good. And that's great. That is, it's lovely. Why would you go if it didn't feel good? But then there is so much more, because if that's all we do, we go there because it feels good, and we go home for, with our brekkies, we have 30 people at brekkie, and they all go home, about 3 feet off the ground. But then what? And so we know what it takes to really lift ourselves into a higher state of vibration. And so what I'd like to talk about today is, yes, it's wonderful to invite people to talk about communities, and there are lots and lots of communities being activated around the world. However, I would like to address the people in the communities, because Shay often talks about communities, about communion, and it's about the communion within for me. There is no way that I could live in a New Earth community if I wasn't in alignment with that vibrational frequency that it takes to lift us out of this old limiting matrix into the higher spheres of existence. And the ultimate knowing to search for and to come to acknowledgement in is that we are the creators of our reality. And the buck stops right here. It doesn't matter what you are experiencing right now. And that is not a blaming or a shaming statement. That is a statement of empowerment, that if I know that I've created, so the world outside of you is a reflection of what's inside of you, how you deal with the world outside. So I'll give you just a little story. I had a little issue with my car. Something misjudged, whatever. It did some damage to my car. And I'm very fond of my car because it gives me independence. And without it, I think I wouldn't have anywhere near as beautiful a life as I do. Now, in the old ways, I would have got very upset and thinking about what am I going to do? It's going to cost me money. I'm going to be with it. None of that. It was just, okay, this is. I can't change it. Blaming doesn't help. Wondering how it happened doesn't help. Worrying about how I'm going to pay for it doesn't help. It's all about what is in this moment and how can I maintain my level of vibrational frequency to a level where good things come into my life. So that is really the challenge I'm throwing out to people. It is becoming a new earth being as the creator of creation consciously. It's all about ownership. Owning this life, this opportunity, this amazing experience with appreciation, with gratitude, and with intention. And that is what I really want to talk about today.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing, Yvonne. I'm really keen to talk about that too. And I've got a really exciting story to share as well, about a very significant moment in my life where I had this profound experience that Sovereign was a part of, in fact. And it was in another country, in a totally new environment, in a new world. But before I get into that story, I just want to invite Sovereign to share a little piece on, what it actually takes, because Sovereign's someone who I've witnessed be in a role or an environment, an ecosystem that has cultivated a lot of community cohesion and connection from 15, 20 years ago, from Far North Queensland when we first connected, building the Real Food Network movement and connecting people together, and just really activated on the ground to connect farmers with local people, with local farmers and families, to be able to make sure that food is localized in that region. And curious to hear from you, Sovereign. We've missed you in the last few weeks in these conversations, but just on that piece of what Yvonne was sharing, the significance obviously of doing the inner work, but what it takes, walking the talk, moving forward in this world that we find ourselves in.
Oh, yay. So nice to be here. For me, it's very simple. I didn't know it at the time because I was acting out of inspiration, but I was also acting out of the sense of responsibility to be the change agent. And I was active, and then I really got activated. I did a Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream symposium. Then I organized, because I was already in community organizing, the facilitated training, and that's where I really got to drop in with the awareness of what that our dreaming and what we willfully put into that has the capacity to change. And that, of course, is a nice spiritual experience and an inspirational experience and a beautiful retreat space. And then it was really about giving form to actioning that, how to take action on that. And yeah, I did that for over a decade. That was inspiring. And it was 40, 50, 60 hours a week moving food and building community resilience by means of organizing on the back of such a vehicle. So much connectivity was able to be developed, and I was a real stand for that. It really takes that willingness to go on the hero's journey, to hear the calling, to feel the inspiration, and to have the courage to make that stand and say, I'm doing this, and not trying to figure everything out, because the limitations of our logical mind are such that if we're not operating from inspiration, in spirit, in spirited energy, we may be trying to logically kind of figure out how we're going to get from A to B. And I've learned that if we are operating in that inspired way, and it is in alignment and in service to a greater good, then we're going to be looked after in the process. And I learned what it took. Yes. And my spirit was still longing to have answers to questions from within, really for them to become found. And so I then traveled, I visited different countries to really explore, how do we bring into being this new earth? Because if it's just by us purchasing food from local farmers and distributing that in food boxes and trying to build community around that, the spiritual component, the communion, the deeper relating wasn't part of that. And I did a lot to also expand myself to organize a community-based retreat center where we could bring also that together. And yet it all was not giving me the insights that I was really looking for. And so ultimately I had to go really remote. I really had to connect with nature. I really had to make some brave, bold, and courageous decisions, and again follow that call to adventure, follow that call of spirit, follow that inspired dream that I was offered to participate in. And that's where you also came, Shay. So I'll give it back to you, because that was definitely a rich, raw, and real experience.
Yeah, it certainly was. Thanks for sharing, Sovereign. And for those who are listening or watching this right now, the year was in 2019. And just a quick story. Tom and I, one of my good friends growing up who I've known for over 20 years of my life, we were reconnected and reunited to be on a mission to do something for the planet. This is pre-C19. We really felt there was something that wasn't just quite right, incongruent. And we felt like we wanted to have an impact that would, serve humanity in a big way, but also give back in a sense and raise awareness to what's going on. We could see there was a lot of problems, but we were looking for answers. And that's when we reached out to Sovereign, because we decided that we wanted to make a film. And we found a compelling story where Sovereign was at this stage living in Vanuatu in the jungle, in this remote location away from everything. We reached out to him as he was initiating a ceremony and an initiation for this sacred land, inviting elders from all over the world to really give their blessings for this community, a very intentional community to live in symbiosis with the environment. So Tom and I couldn't believe it, because it happened literally as we were in this spirit of, divine timing. Sovereign immediately responded and was like, "We'd love for you to come." And so we thought this would be a great opportunity for us to capture this and document it and share this story to the world, as we feel this could really, inspire people to reorientate themselves to a more natural way of living. We felt this story had something profound to it. And so we packed our bags and we got flown over to meet Sovereign in Vanuatu. And it was one of the biggest islands in Vanuatu called Espiritu Santo. And once we landed in this tiny little airport, we caught a little bus over, we met Sovereign, and then we headed into the hills. And we were literally a 5-hour journey away from everything, down these little dirt tracks, across rivers and up into the mountains. And we had landed, we had made it. And I just want to pull up this image for you guys right now, just to give you some sort of a sense of what it was like when we were over there. But in the photo, you'll see there's a lot of different people up there, but in the bottom right-hand corner, we're walking through the jungle there, and that gives you a little snapshot that we were literally in this remote area. We were in the middle of nowhere, let's say, but some would say lost, but we were also in that moment finding ourselves in a big way. And on the top left, my good friend Thomas, we were filming this ceremony and this initiation, the blessing on the land with the people. And that was a beautiful element, was these local Yvonne people were living already on the land, with the land, in this beautiful relationship. And there in the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see, in the big group photo, Sovereign in the middle towards the back, I'm in there and towards the back. And it was this beautiful relationship that we had cultivated over this time with all of these beautiful people. And I just remember like sitting there one day with a couple of the local fellas who were really handy with the machete, and I was contemplating, and I was like, yeah, wow. I was chatting to him, his name was Cornerstone, and I was saying, I really want to, I was really like calculating it in my mind around, I could go back and save money and come back and build a hut and live here and have this beautiful life and seek all of this amazing, opportunity of living in the land. And then he kind of stopped and looked at me and he was like, why not just enjoy it now? And it was a big wake up call for me in that moment, because I realized, that wealth has nothing to do with money. And abundance has nothing to do with money. Although, money can bring other things in life, such as choices or options and whatnot. But I really started to realize that wealth was everything in here, and the abundance of the connection within here. And I was always seeking things outside of myself in the future, or things that I could create or manifest or bring into being, when really it was already happening right in front of me. And I just needed to drop in and enjoy the experience more and more and more. And there were so many profound messages and learnings that I had in this short period of time that I would love to share, more on. But I think oftentimes we when we're envisioning this new earth experience and this new paradigm, we can get easy to get caught up and forget what's already landed and grounded in here right now in front of us, and the beautiful connections that we already have, the beautiful places that we get to be, and the amount of abundance that we actually have and prosperity in this life that we can often overlook and take for granted. And oftentimes, walking the talk and actioning the vision, what this talk and conversation is all about, is for me always recognizing and remembering what we actually already really have. And often I know from my experience that can get quickly overlooked, particularly when we have these amazing visions, and we also want to invite others into that picture of what life can be like. But then it's like often reeling it back in to just recognize and remember how much we already do have. And so, I just wanted to share that story because I felt it might be inspiring for those, because I had learned so much, again, from these local people in the way that they did live their lives. And I wanted to introduce that mindset and heart set on how we relate to life on a more simpler perspective that is not necessarily seeking something out of a scarcity, but more appreciating from what's actually real in here. So I guess I'm curious, Yvonne, I'd love to hear your perspective on how things, in your community, what you've experienced in your time, what has been, relevant part of the conversation, but also, what has really stood out for you in that relating with others in the community that you've cultivated?
Wow, it makes me smile when you say, oh, it was 2019. And I say, oh, where was I in 2019? But when you're talking about these experiences, one of my main experiences, I have had so many, and that would take up 3 hours, and we don't have that. But it's when I went on my shamanic journey, or one of them in Peru, in South America, not just in Peru, and it was just a way that you're talking about how these things so just symbiotically create, turn up, and this just absolutely turned up for me. It was a shamanic conference in the Sacred Valley, and I just got a phone call saying you need to be there, and I went, well, yes, but that takes funds, and I don't have them anyway. Cut a long story short, I was sponsored to go, and the learning that you have when you connect to what I call the original people, the people that live on the land, with the land, in alignment with nature, who do not see themselves as separate, and who live in a really fluid community where everyone supports everyone else. They don't have to live with each other. They all have separate homes and come out, but they come out together, and they never feel alone, because they never are alone, and because we know we're never alone. And it is that amazing experience of being with people who live in a much more simple way. And what I learned from that was really, my journey was already set out. But you asked before of what does it take? And what I know that it takes, and this is, I want to kind of bring it back to people who come into communities because it feels good. But it is about feeling good within yourself, and that takes discipline. It takes a spiritual practice, and I keep saying that it takes a spiritual practice that is never ending. It isn't a journey where you go, oh, if I meditate for 3 hours a day, then there'll be, that's it. No, that's not it, because there's so much more. This spiritual discipline is about coming home to knowing who you are. It's all about first know thyself. And thyself has got nothing to do with your personality. It has to do with you, the creation of the Creator. And when we can start to see ourselves as that, and we start to connect with that, and the personality, that's temporary. But that part within you, that's forever. That was before you became this personality, and it will be after you leave this personality. What has happened, of course, is that the personality has been made to be the most important, and also the most demanding and needy, which takes up all your time, and therefore it needs to take a crisis for you to suddenly go, hang on, I'm on the wrong path. I need to do something different. And that is when the inner calling comes, when it's screaming at you, okay, this is not why I came. I did not come here to do whatever you're doing. I did not come here to every day get on the train and slog down the road with millions of other people and go to the office and then come back and scream at, the missus. That isn't what I came for. And so we all hit that moment of crisis at some stage if we haven't learned that at an early age. So for me, it's all about coming back to what are you activating within yourself with this spiritual discipline. So it talks about being in spirit. And that has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with soul. It has to do with this connection within yourself, your heart, the energy, the life force that is you. And so, yes, when you come into a community, that feels good, and it's lovely to sit and chat, and that's all good, and it's great to explore your feelings, and that's all good. But what in you are you activating every day of your life to raise yourself to a place where you no longer live in fear, where you no longer have doubt, where you no longer need to judge, where you no longer feel separate. And that takes discipline. I have a success formula of 7 steps, right? The first one is commitment. The second one is dedication. Once you're committed, then you need to dedicate to that. And then it's discipline, which is order and routine, right? Then it needs determination, seeing it through no matter what. Then you need to have a positive attitude. And that means watching your words and your thoughts and all of that stuff. And then it takes purposeful action. Purposeful action means that before you act, you make sure that what that action is, it's directed to something that's going to raise you and not drop you, where you know that it's going to take you where your vision is. And then finally, one of my favorites is celebrate. Celebrate every tiny step you take, because we are so used to judging ourselves, reprimanding ourselves, thinking we're not good enough. But every little thing that you do, you need to celebrate you, because without you, there is none of this. So they're my 7 steps to success. And it's not easy to live by, but that comes from the commitment to it and the determination. And at this stage of my life, yes, I still get up at 5:30 in the morning, because that is my spiritual discipline. And I have a certain routine before I go to sleep. That is my spiritual discipline. And because I do that, I feel protected, supported, guided in the middle, because I never lose that connection during the day or during the night. And that is what it's taken for me, and what it continues to take. And my mission is to support people and assist people in taking that on, taking that spiritual discipline on, which is the road to knowing thyself and finding the magnificence within each one of us. And it is magnificent. It really is, when you stop judging it or comparing it or thinking that you need someone's approval for it. When you get that calling within, that is, then you're free. Then you're free. And one of the reasons that last week's video was so well received was that lovely young 20-year-old, his calling was not to be denied. And look what that's creating. And that's within all of us. So that's really where I'm coming from within communities. Let's, activate the communities, and let's keep the vision of a greater, a greater new earth. But to live within that, we have to work on ourselves and lift ourselves to that vibration. Otherwise, it's like wanting to go to the first floor without a lift or a stair. It's a bit difficult. So, okay, I'll send it back to you, Shay.
It's so good, Yvonne. Thanks for sharing that. It's such great wisdom just to soak into the cells on a weekly and daily basis. Often I go back and listen to these calls often, and I want to invite everyone who's tuning in to just go and just go to sleep listening to these podcasts, because they're great just vibrational words to soak into the system. And if you are tuning in now, I'd be curious to hear what your spiritual discipline is for you. What do you guys practice? Yvonne shared, she gets up early, she writes, she journals often and posts every day, actually, not often, every day. And curious to hear from those tuning in what it is that your spiritual practice is. And that's what makes the world so beautiful and unique, is that we're all so diverse, and we got this beautiful creative capacity to create the life that we all want. And I'm sure that everyone's life is going to be totally different. Absolutely. And Sovereign is one of those unique creatives, visionaries that has he created a beautiful life for himself, and very unique. And I'm curious what your what your discipline is for you. I know you just come off the back of a retreat, really nice resetting, cleansing process. What would be a value that you think, or you feel is most necessary and relevant for people to have that connection consistently to a higher spirit that allows them to guide them through their life?
Yeah, wonderful, Shay. I'll bring something up. Here I am. I'm lying on the ground, cracked open. I'm breaking down, and I'm dying. I'm dying another death of identity that I thought I was. Another process of yet discovering that there is more. And it was in this natural environment where I was laying, weeping, wailing, vulnerable by myself in my little hut with no one around other than weird forest noises and spirits wandering through the bush. It's where I learned that the one thing that I will commit myself to willfully is to learn how to die again and again and again. Because through each death, there always has been a rebirthing of more expansion, more availability, more insight, more connection, more reverence for the natural world. And for me, that is what the gift of life and the journeys that we can go on is really for. It's for us to learn that staying inside of the container of who we think we are may very well be trapping the essence of our spirit. And I have known ever since I was very young that there's been a spirit alive in me that at times when I would put cages around it, or I would put myself in business arrangements, or I would put myself in a structured form where that spirit wasn't able to come to its full expression, it wasn't able to blossom and bloom anymore, I would experience a wilting. And that's when the call to another adventure comes in. That's when the invitation from the universe shows up and says, we want you to be here. And life finds a way. And this is one of my practices, is to quietly and peaceably surrender to life and the greater interconnectedness and the unknowingness of what this life path really has in store for me. Because it's so easy to overuse and even misuse that intelligence, to carve a path based on what we all think we know. And for me, I have had the beautiful opportunity to go into those sideways and then to come back out of them. And the way that I came out of them is that I got cracked open yet again. And there have been many moments, and most of them were profound spiritual recognitions of the interconnectedness of life that I was part of, that I felt totally in awe of, that allowed me to gain insight that there is so much more, and that the limited worldview that I was operating on is really something that I get to renew. And so in the process of being there in Vanuatu, this was the big call out to really start anew with the spirit of the land, anew with the spirit within me, a new beginning anew, and forming a covenant, a santeki, a holy agreement that I am willfully here to surrender my old life and to step into a new way of being that I don't know what it is because it's new. And yet that's what was coming through in the calling for that beautiful gathering and that activation of the dream seeds there in that beautiful place in freedom, fully surrounded by the natural world and held by the land in such a beautiful, rich, and primal way. And this is what there is on offer for all of us, is again and again being willing to surrender to anew and then anew. And this is the process of life, living and dying. And that's not in the physical, but it's in the metaphysical, it's in the mental, really being willing to renew our minds, to be willing to embark on an adventure that may be unknown, maybe there's uncertainties, but to cultivate the courage to step into it nevertheless. Because when we go on those journeys, we find more of ourselves. And we often don't even need to really leave the physical place that we're living. It's just being willing to open ourselves up to what life has available to us, for what there is still for our spirit to explore and for our spirit to bring through. And I learned to stop trying to limit that energetic inner knowing to come through. And now I am living where I am in the beautiful, beautiful landscape of Bali, in a beautiful, beautiful life path relationship with my beautiful queen. And it is really worth every death, is really worth the expansion that we get in return.
Love it, man. Thanks for sharing, Sovereign. It's such a powerful remembering that, you know, life and death is happening every moment, every day. All these cells are, you know, regenerating all the time. This, you know, community of 70 trillion cells that live inside of me is regenerating itself all the time. And it's often part of the conversation that is left out, you know, the process of death in this Western culture of what I've experienced growing up. And we often talk in these conversations around the education system that is going through its, you know, rebirthing process, but recognizing the immortality that we have, or the mortality, is a reminder that we've only got a short life. It actually happens very, very quickly. And it's like, what do we actually want to be doing with our life? What do we want to be contributing to and giving back to? And I remember that was such an amazing journey, spending that time in Vanuatu. And I'm excited because that was one of the beginning stages of the filmmaking journey for Thomas and I. And then we did make a little short trailer film for that journey, which we will play towards the end of this video. We've got it there waiting. But before we get to that, I'd love to hear from you, Yvonne, just in reflections of what Sovereign has shared and his experience of dying and then being born again.
Wow, well, that was so beautiful, Sovereign. Thank you for that. Dying and rebirth. I think I've lived at least 9 lives already, and I don't know if I'm a cat. I do like them, but each time it's the death of one part of you, so another part of you can be reborn. And when you're talking about Bali, part of my heart lives there. But I'd love to share this story because when you surrender to your calling, that is when you are when life takes over, and when it takes you where you will find your next living, your next experiencing, your next growth opportunity. And so in 2010, whilst having a shower, and usually in the shower, it's a really good channel of communication, I find. I was told, this voice says in my head, get ready and run a retreat in Bali for the 21st of December 2012, right? That famous date that now seems a very dim memory. And I stood there and I said, well, good morning to you too, and how will I go about that? So again, as Sovereign says, when you say I'm willing, that's all that you ever have to say. I'm willing. I'm willing to be the best of myself. I'm willing to set my core signature free. I'm willing to allow my soul to live its full expression. That willingness is what starts things moving. And so before I knew it, I was in Bali on a recce with people that I had known for forever, and things just fell into place for me. It was quite remarkable. Doors opened that I never opened to, the average foreign woman or tourist, and the generosity of heart and spirit. It was like the Balinese could see me, could see that I was not there as the usual tourist, and so the journey went on from there. Of course, I had preparation because I'd already spent 3 years of my life in Indonesia. They weren't the happiest moments, but the happy part of that was my connection to the people. And I found that the Balinese were very similar to the people of my childhood that I remember. And it was their innocence and their open-heartedness once they saw you and they resonated with you. And so my love affair of 8 years of creating these retreats where magic happened every time I set foot on that earth. And it was like a homecoming to me. And I'll tell you one story that was quite phenomenal. One of the things I was told to do for that specific day on that specific day at 11:11 a.m. was to place a crystal in a profound place to anchor. And I had no idea where or whatever. However, these things happen, and I found myself in a tiny little village in the middle of nowhere, and in an old forest, ancient temple that is no longer. And later I found it was the first temple, first Hindu temple ever created on Bali. And there I was welcomed with open arms by the Manku and allowed to place my crystal at their altar. So that was many years ago. That was 2012. And so fast forward to, I think it was where are we now? I think it was 2018 or 17. I can't remember. We made that visit to that particular temple part of retreats where we would do in the old growth forest, because there's no temple left. We would do our ceremonies, and this particular day we went up there, and I was looking for the Manku, and I didn't know where he lived, so we were guided up to someone's house, and we left there. And my driver and guide was talking to the chap in Balinese, and I was just sitting looking around. Now, this is a little village really in the middle of the jungle. And all of a sudden, a door opened, and a very, very sick man walked out. He was huge. He was very unkempt. And obviously, he was very jaundiced. And his eyes met mine. And as sick as he was, he turned and walked towards me and sat beside me. And I looked at him, and we could not speak each other's language, but I could feel him ask me, help me. So there I was, this little Western woman sitting in the middle of nowhere, which I later found out was an old Manku who was in severe liver failure. And with my medical background, that was pretty easy to see. And I gave him healing. I sat there and gave him an energy healing. And he sat and he just drew the energy out of me with such gratitude. So I gave some instructions to the people that they ought to look after him better and that he needed, some attention. I didn't really think that he had much of a chance. He was a very, very sick man. And, when I left, I thought, what is that? What was it that this man, this Manku, this Balinese man, felt that I could help him? He actually lived another few years. And the next time I went up there, his son, who was English educated, came out and hugged me and said, thank you for what you did for my father. And I said, I don't know what I did. I just sat there and I just responded to my inner calling, and somehow his inner calling connected. And that is what happens when we tune out the programming, the stories, and we really just come from this deep human connection that we have for each other's well-being. What on earth brought me to his door? What made him come out in that moment? What made him think that this little Western woman could do anything for him? But it happened because I was open and he was open. And that's the magic, that each one of us here has experienced some of that. And when we experience, we just want everyone to have that experience. That's why we get so passionate about it. That's why we become sometimes such bores and we can't stop saying, do the work, surrender, do all of this, because then you have those experiences, because they're so life-changing. They're so humbling. So humbling. I have so many stories I could share with you about Bali where people have done things for me and my retreats that are just magical, unbelievable. But it happens when you live true to you, not the persona you, but the you that you discover more and more, the more deaths you have of the identities that are false. And that's really what Sovereign's talking about. It's the death of these identities that we get so attached to. And when we make the identity as the creator and the expression of creation, when you identify with that, that's when you live this beautiful, magical life.
Wow, there it is. Beautiful story. Thanks for sharing, Yvonne. I really love that so much. And thank you, Sovereign, for sharing and everything that you do for this world and the work that you guys are doing in bringing this energy through the channel that you are, the vessel, so that you can live guided by your heart and guided by a higher purpose that is bigger than any one person, any one individual. And such a privilege to be sharing in this space with you guys. And I want to thank those who have been watching, tuning in, listening to this conversation, or who join us every week. If you do love these conversations, feel free to let us know in the comments. And if you don't like them, no problem as well. Let us know what you don't like about it. But we feel if you wanted to share that amongst your friends, and maybe if you put the little bell icon on, then you'll be straight to your screen notified when the next great conversation is on with Yvonne and myself or Sovereign. So before we close up, I just wanted to share this highlight reel from our East of Eden trip to Vanuatu, which was a really magnificent moment and a big catalyst for the journey of transformation to unravel in my world. And it was such a privilege to be invited on that journey from Sovereign and obviously, of course, Steve Quinto, who's still, I believe, living there, and the many beautiful souls that we met on that journey, the local people and the the elders who were also invited. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It is just a short one, very beautiful one. It's quite poetic, and yeah, we'll see you after. What a memorable moment and beautiful experience, creating anew. And amazing to reflect that, you know, we've just been living through the last 2 years experience, a big catalyst for more people to awaken to the potential of living in, you know, deeper reverence, connection with this inner spirit that we've been talking about this entire conversation over the last hour, and that more and more people are feeling that core, feeling that, you know, going through that process of transformation and really dropping into that. And I just wanted to honor those who are joining us in this conversation. We had Paula, who agrees and says, I love these conversations a lot. You really hit the nail on the head right there. Very uplifting. Thank you. We also had Nella saying, wow, loving it. Colleen tuning in and saying, wow, that was gorgeous. Sovereign, thank you for your deaths and thank you for your rebirths. And so beautiful to see so many people tuning into, you know, this greater vision for all of life on this planet, in this moment, on this earth right now, and that we get to be a part of that, co-creating, regenerating our own cellular structure, as well as our environment and the way that we are living in these cohesive communities. So just to wrap it up, Sovereign, would you like to share anything to close today's conversation?
Well, I wasn't going to. I just actually, I have to compose myself a little bit here, which is beautiful. I'd like to sound out the inspiration to be willing to allow yourself to be moved by life, to be moved by your journey, to be moved what you grappled with, what you navigated, what you came through, and really embrace the preciousness of the memories that are there. Because it's only recently that I really discovered that I really disassociated from feeling any sort of gratitude and a sense of, wow, I really did that. And wow, that really grew me. I haven't been championing myself. I haven't been celebrating myself for the immense journeys that I've undertaken. And I've never really shared the stories. I've never shared authentically and in the raw what it really took to be there in that little hut with no one around, up in the dark, drinking the rainwater and picking the fruits from the fruit trees or what has fallen on the floor, and design out into the future a community of well-being. And I left a lot behind, and I'm realizing by being in this conversation that I get to pick up some parts and pieces yet again and bring them home. And in that, I recognize how beautiful it is that I have this allowance to feel the feelings, to let life move me, because I'm willing to feel, I'm willing to be vulnerable. And I want to close with a little poem, and I'll put a little write-up that I don't think I've even ever shared out in the world here in the chat for everybody to see, that they can click. But I'm gonna close us out and put this lovely image here over the top with with some poetry. She was my ultimate reflection, simply by being, exposing, revealing, and unveiling me, naked unto myself. This mind, I finally returned to nature in the raw, in the real, and in the living. In her reflection, life, love, self-sovereignty, and human ecology became again pure syntropy. In all her ways, always, I am welcome to partake, to enjoin my mind song to hers. And she giggles as I try to sing all of her patterns, one after another. She admires how a manful mind is will to unwind. And as I give her my hand and head in surrender, she girths my being with zealous love. Look deep into my being, witness my living lifeways, question their function, and will aflame your intrinsic knowing and all that you left behind to find me, and I will crown you a pattern of perfection expressed through time, if you are willing, anew. Thank you.
Thank you. So beautiful. I feel so blessed. And as someone would say, so full. What a great conversation. We'll see you next week.